In the heart of Port Harcourt, where the Niger Delta's oil wealth painted the skyline with gleaming towers, yet left countless dreams unfulfilled, there lived a young woman whose story would soon remind everyone that true riches aren't always counted in Naira notes. This is a tale about Adanna, a waitress whose simple kindness opened doors she never knew existed. Before we journey together through her extraordinary transformation, I'd love for you to hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. And please, drop your thoughts in the comments below. Your perspective matters. Now, let's begin. Adanna had been wiping tables at Sunrise Café for nearly 2 years, her slender fingers moving with practiced grace across the checkered tablecloths. The cafe sat on Aba Road, wedged between a fabric shop and a pharmacy, catching the morning rush of civil servants and business people who barely noticed the girls serving their tea. At 26, Adanna carried dreams bigger than her circumstances, dreams of owning something, building something, being somebody beyond the waitress in the corner. Her father had passed when she was 15, leaving her mother to raise 3 children on a trader's income. Adanna's wages kept her youngest brother in secondary school, so complaining felt like a luxury she couldn't afford. Every Tuesday and Friday morning, precisely at 7:30, an elderly gentleman would shuffle through the cafe's glass door. Mr. Obiora, though Adanna wouldn't learn his full name until much later, always chose the same table by the window overlooking the bustling street. He was a thin man with silver hair that caught the morning light, his weathered hands trembling slightly as he unfolded his newspaper. His clothes, though clean, had seen better days, and he spoke so softly that Adanna often had to lean closer to hear his order. Toast bread, scrambled eggs, and tea. No sugar, my dear. The first time Adanna noticed his struggle to butter his toast, something stirred in her chest. It reminded her of her late grandmother, how age had stolen the strength from her fingers in those final years. Without asking, Adanna gently took the knife from Mr. Obiora's hand. "Let me help you, sir," she said with a smile that reached her eyes. The old man looked up, surprised, then nodded gratefully. From that day forward, it became their quiet ritual. She'd prepare his toast just right, cut it into manageable pieces, and sometimes, when the cafe wasn't too busy, she'd sit for a moment and chat with him about the weather, the traffic, or the latest Port Harcourt gossip. "You have a good heart, Adanna," Mr. Obiora would say, his voice carrying a weight she didn't yet understand. "In this city where everyone is rushing, chasing money and connections, you stop to see an old man. That is rare." Adanna would laugh it off, wiping her hands on her apron. "It's nothing, sir, just being human." But it wasn't nothing to him. Mr. Obiora watched her interactions with other customers, how she defended a young mother whose child had accidentally spilled juice, how she shared her lunch with a street beggar when her manager wasn't looking, how she never complained, even when difficult customers reduced her to near tears. He saw in her something the world had tried to beat out of her: genuine compassion without expectation of reward. Other cafe regulars barely noticed Mr. Obiora. To them, he was just another retiree killing time over breakfast. Adanna's co-workers, Blessing and Tunde, sometimes teased her about wasting energy on that old man who barely tips. But Adanna felt something in his loneliness that echoed her own quiet fears, the terror of being forgotten, of becoming invisible in a city that moved too fast to care. So she kept showing up for him, kept smiling, kept making sure he felt seen. What Adanna didn't know was that Mr. Obiora was far from the struggling pensioner he appeared to be. Behind that humble exterior lived Obiora Nwosu, founder of Obiora Enterprises, a restaurant and hospitality empire spanning 12 establishments across Rivers State and beyond. He'd built his fortune from a single food stall in the 1970s, working 18-hour days until his hands bled, transforming his vision into reality. But success had come with a price: a loveless marriage that ended in bitter divorce, 2 children who saw him only as an ATM machine, and a bone-deep loneliness that all his wealth couldn't cure. For the past 5 years, since stepping back from daily operations, Mr. Obiora had been conducting a quiet experiment. He'd visited his own restaurants incognito, wearing simple clothes, observing how staff treated customers they assumed had no power, no influence. What he found broke his heart. Employees who faked smiles for the wealthy and ignored the poor. Managers who cut corners and pocketed the difference. A culture that had forgotten the values he'd built his empire upon. Then he'd stumbled into Sunrise Café, a competitor's establishment, and found Adanna, a young woman who embodied everything he'd once believed about hospitality and human dignity. As months turned into 2 years, Mr. Obiora made his decision. He revised his will, met with his lawyer, Barrister Azugo, and put everything in place. His children, Chidi and Amara, would learn the lesson he'd failed to teach them through wealth, that character matters more than blood, that kindness is the greatest inheritance. He didn't tell Adanna. He simply continued their Tuesday and Friday routine, storing up these moments like treasures, knowing they'd be his last. On a humid Thursday morning in late September, Mr. Obiora didn't show up for his usual Friday breakfast. Adanna felt an unexpected worry gnaw at her stomach. "Maybe he's ill," she told Blessing, glancing at his empty table. The weekend passed, then another week. The table by the window remained vacant, and Adanna's heart grew heavier with each passing day. She considered asking around but realized she didn't even know his full name or address. He was just the kind old man from table 7. Then came the morning that would split Adanna's life into before and after. It was a bright Wednesday morning, 3 weeks after Mr. Obiora's last visit, when Adanna's ordinary life shattered into 1,000 glittering pieces. She was refilling the sugar dispensers, humming along to the radio's gospel music, when the cafe door swung open with unusual force. 3 men in sharp black suits entered, followed by 2 security personnel whose presence immediately silenced the breakfast chatter. The lead man, tall and imposing with salt and pepper hair and gold-rimmed glasses, scanned the room with practiced authority. "I'm looking for Miss Adanna Okafor," his voice boomed across the cafe. Every head turned toward Adanna, who froze with a sugar jar suspended midair. Her manager, Mr. Emeka, not to be confused with what was coming, rushed forward nervously. "Is there a problem, sir? Has she done something wrong?" The fear in his voice was palpable. Visits from lawyers rarely meant good news in Port Harcourt. "I am Barrister Chukwuemeka Ezeugo," the man announced, pulling a leather briefcase onto the nearest table. "I represent the estate of Mr. Obiora Nwosu, and I need to speak with Miss Okafor privately. Immediately." Adanna's legs nearly gave out. Estate. That word meant only one thing. "Mr. Obiora, he's—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Barrister Ezeugo's expression softened slightly. "I'm afraid Mr. Nwosu passed away 2 weeks ago. Heart failure in his sleep. Peaceful, according to his doctors." The sugar jar slipped from Adanna's fingers, shattering across the floor in a crystalline explosion that nobody moved to clean. Tears blurred her vision as the weight of loss settled on her shoulders. That kind old man, who'd shared stories about his youth in the village, who'd laughed at her jokes about Lagos traffic, who'd called her daughter when he thought she couldn't hear. Gone. Just gone. "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping her eyes with her apron. He was a good man. He thought very highly of you as well, Miss Okafor. In fact, that's why I'm here." Barrister Ezeugo gestured toward the cafe's small back office. "We need privacy for what I'm about to tell you." Adanna's manager, curiosity overriding protocol, started to follow, but the lawyer's sharp look stopped him cold. In the cramped office that smelled of stale coffee and old receipts, Barrister Ezeugo opened his briefcase and withdrew a thick document bound in blue legal backing. "Miss Okafor, I'll be direct because this will be difficult to believe. Mr. Obiora Nwosu was not just a retired old man. He was the founder and majority shareholder of Obiora Enterprises, 12 restaurants, 2 hotels, and various properties across Rivers State, valued at approximately 4.3 billion naira. He paused, letting the number sink in. Adanna blinked, certain she'd misheard. "Billion?" Her voice came out as a squeak. "Yes, and according to his last will and testament, executed 8 months ago and verified by 3 witnesses. Mr. Nwosu has left the entirety of Obiora Enterprises to you. Everything. The restaurants, the hotels, the investment accounts, his personal residence in Old GRA. All of it now belongs to you, Miss Adanna Okafor. The room tilted. Adanna gripped the desk edge, her breathing shallow and rapid. That's not possible. There must be a mistake. I'm just a waitress. I barely finished secondary school. I don't know anything about running businesses. Why would he? But even as she protested, she remembered his words. You have a good heart, Adanna. Had he really meant this? Had 2 years of buttered toast and genuine conversation been worth billions? Barrister Azugo pulled out photographs, corporate documents, property deeds, proof upon proof that this wasn't a fever dream. Mr. Nwosu left you a personal letter as well. He was very specific in his instructions. He watched you, Miss Okafor. He saw your character. He believed you embodied the values his empire was built upon, values his own children had abandoned. The distaste in his voice was unmistakable. His children. Oh God, his children. Adanna's mind raced. They must be furious. They'll fight this. They'll say I manipulated him or... They've already tried, the lawyer interrupted grimly. Chidi and Amara Nwosu have filed 3 separate legal challenges. They've hired one of Lagos's most expensive legal teams. They've contacted journalists, claiming you're a gold digger who seduced their elderly father. But Mr. Nwosu anticipated all of this. His will is ironclad, witnessed properly, and he underwent cognitive evaluations proving sound mind. He documented everything, including evidence of his children's mismanagement of company funds during the brief period he'd let them oversee operations. The door suddenly burst open. Adanna's manager stood there, phone in hand, eyes wide with shock. Adanna, there are people outside, reporters, photographers. Someone leaked this story already. They're calling you the billionaire waitress. It's all over social media. Through the office window, Adanna could see the gathering crowd, camera flashes already popping like fireworks. Her peaceful anonymity had evaporated in minutes. Port Harcourt loved few things more than scandal and overnight success stories. She was about to become both. Within hours, Adanna found herself transported to Obiora Enterprises headquarters in the heart of Port Harcourt's business district. The building's glass and steel facade reflected clouds that seemed too peaceful for the chaos brewing inside. Barrister Azugo guided her through marble lobbies and past portraits of Mr. Obiora in his prime, a handsome man with the same gentle eyes she'd come to know, but standing tall in expensive suits, commanding respect. The boardroom was already occupied when they entered. 2 people sat at the far end of the long mahogany table, their faces twisted with barely contained rage. Chidi Nwosu, about 45 with his father's height but none of his warmth, stood abruptly. This is a joke. This is an absolute mockery. Beside him, his sister Amara, draped in designer labels and dripping contempt, looked Adanna up and down like she was something scraped off a shoe. You have some nerve showing up here in your cafe uniform, Amara sneered, her voice sharp enough to cut glass, playing the humble servant role right to the end. How long did you work on our father? How many lies did you whisper? Did you promise him grandchildren, companionship in his old age? Her accusations flew like arrows, each one designed to wound. Chidi circled the table slowly, a predator sizing up prey. Our father built this empire with his bare hands. We are his blood, his legacy. And you think you can just waltz in and take everything because you smiled pretty and buttered his toast? Adanna wanted to run. Everything in her screamed to bolt from this room, these people, this impossible situation. But then she remembered Mr. Obiora's face, the loneliness that lived in his eyes even when he smiled, the way he'd once mentioned his children only visited when they wanted money. She thought about why he might have chosen her, a nobody with nothing, over them. Maybe it wasn't about what she deserved. Maybe it was about teaching them something they'd refused to learn. I didn't ask for this, Adanna said quietly, finding her voice. I didn't even know who your father really was. I just treated him like a human being, like he mattered. The simplicity of her words seemed to enrage Amara further. Oh, how noble, the saint of Sunrise Café. Well, let me tell you something. Little girl, running a billion-naira empire isn't about kindness. It's about strategy, connections, experience. You'll run this company into the ground within a year, and we'll be there to pick up the pieces. Enjoy your moment in the sun, because winter is coming for you. Barrister Azugo stepped forward, his voice cutting through the tension. This meeting is concluded. Miss Okafor has been properly briefed on her inheritance and her rights. Any further challenges to the will can be directed through proper legal channels. Security will show you out. As Chidi and Amara were escorted from the building, their threats echoing down the hallway, Adanna sank into the CEO's chair, her chair now, and wondered if kindness alone could possibly be enough to survive what was coming. The first month felt like drowning in deep water with weights tied to her ankles. Adanna moved into Mr. Obiora's old GRA mansion, a sprawling estate with more rooms than she could count, but spent most nights curled up in the smallest bedroom, overwhelmed by the silence and space. The household staff, initially skeptical of this waitress-turned-heiress, watched her eat gari and soup in the massive dining room, sitting in the same spot every evening, rather than at the head of the long mahogany table. "She's different," the cook, Mama Ngozi, whispered to the gardener. "She thanks me every time. The former madam never even looked at us. But gratitude wouldn't run a business empire, and Chidi and Amara knew it. They launched their assault with precision, spreading rumors through Port Harcourt's tight-knit business community that Adanna was incompetent, that investors should pull out before she destroyed their father's legacy. They planted stories in newspapers about the uneducated waitress playing CEO, complete with unflattering photos of her leaving the office looking exhausted and confused. Within 2 weeks, 3 major suppliers threatened to cancel contracts, citing concerns about leadership stability. Adanna sat in her new office, Mr. Obiora's old office, surrounded by financial reports she barely understood, fighting tears of frustration. The numbers swam before her eyes like mocking strangers. She'd been brave in the boardroom confrontation, but bravery didn't teach you profit margins, supply chain management, or corporate law. Maybe Amara was right. Maybe kindness wasn't enough. Maybe she should just sign everything back to them and return to the simple life where her biggest worry was whether customers would tip. Then she found the letter. It had been placed in the desk's bottom drawer, sealed in an envelope with her name written in Mr. Obiora's shaky handwriting. With trembling fingers, she opened it and began to read. "My dear Adanna, if you're reading this, I am gone, and you are probably terrified. Good. Fear means you understand the weight of what I've given you. But let me tell you what I saw in you that my own children never possessed. You see people, not positions. You serve because you care, not because you want something in return. That is the foundation of real leadership." The letter continued for 3 pages, offering wisdom and specific instructions. Trust Boniface in accounting. He's honest but overlooked because he doesn't play politics. Mrs. Ifioma in HR knows where all the bodies are buried. She was loyal to me, not my children. And check the 3rd filing cabinet in the executive storage room. I kept records of everything. Every shady deal, every corner cut, every theft disguised as business expense. You'll need them. Adanna read it twice, then 3 times, feeling Mr. Obiora's presence in every word. He hadn't just left her money, he'd left her a roadmap. The next morning, Adanna arrived at headquarters wearing a simple but professional dress, her hair neatly braided, her shoulders squared with new determination. She called Boniface to her office first. The thin, nervous man in his 50s entered, expecting termination. He'd heard the Nwosu siblings wanted to install their own people. Instead, Adanna asked him a simple question. If you could fix one thing in this company, what would it be? Boniface blinked in surprise. Then words poured out like a dam breaking. The Port Harcourt Garden Restaurant, the flagship. The manager there, Mr. Chidi's friend, has been skimming for 2 years. False vendor invoices, ghost employees on payroll. I reported it to Mr. Chidi, but he said to mind my business. I have proof, madam, but Adanna held up her hand. Show me everything, and stop calling me madam. Call me Adanna. Over the next 2 weeks, Adanna assembled her team, not the executives Chidi and Amara had installed, but the overlooked workers who'd kept the empire running while the entitled children played politics. Mrs. Ifeoma provided personnel files showing which managers were competent and which were merely connected. Boniface's evidence revealed a web of corruption that made Adanna's blood boil. The executive storage room yielded Mr. Obiora's meticulous documentation: emails, recorded conversations, financial trails showing how Chidi had been planning to sell off properties to pay gambling debts, how Amara had been funneling company money into her failed fashion business. But having evidence and knowing what to do with it were different things. Adanna spent late nights teaching herself business basics through YouTube videos and old textbooks, asking questions that executives found elementary, but which revealed gaps in their own understanding. "Why do we charge this much for meals when ingredients cost this little?" she asked during one meeting. The CFO started explaining margins and overhead, but Adanna interrupted. "I'm not asking about formulas. I'm asking why we charge N5,000 for jollof rice that cost N800 to make when there are good people who'd fill our restaurants at N3,000. We can still profit and serve more customers." The room went silent. It was such a simple observation, the kind that only someone who'd lived on tight budgets would think to ask. The CFO, a pragmatic man who'd been secretly hoping this new CEO would bring change, leaned forward with interest. "You're talking about volume strategy. Lower margins but higher turnover. It could work, especially in our mid-tier restaurants." For the first time, Adanna saw respect flicker in the executive's eyes. She wasn't educated in their world, but she understood people, the foundation of any service business. Meanwhile, Chidi and Amara escalated their campaign. They called an emergency shareholders meeting, rallying minority investors with apocalyptic warnings about the company's future under untested leadership. They demanded Adanna's removal, presenting a motion to install Chidi as interim CEO. The meeting was scheduled for a Friday afternoon in the company's largest conference hall, and word spread through Port Harcourt's business community like wildfire. Everyone wanted to see if the billionaire waitress would survive or crumble. Adanna entered that conference hall with Barrister Ezeugo, Boniface, Mrs. Ifeoma, and 3 other loyal employees carrying boxes of documents. 50 shareholders filled the room, old men in expensive agbada, younger business people in sharp suits, all watching with predatory interest. Chidi stood at the podium, confident and polished, delivering a presentation about Adanna's incompetence, the company's declining reputation, the urgent need for, quote, experienced leadership from the Nwosu bloodline. When he finished, the room erupted in support of applause. Amara smiled triumphantly from the front row. Then Adanna stood, her legs shaking but her voice steady. "Mr. Chidi speaks about bloodline and experience. Let me speak about truth and theft." She nodded to Boniface, who began distributing folders to every shareholder. "In those folders, you'll find documented evidence of financial crimes committed by Chidi and Amara Nwosu over the past 3 years. Ghost employees, false invoices, embezzled funds totaling over 60 million naira, money stolen not from me, but from you, the shareholders whose investments they betrayed." The room exploded into chaos. Shareholders flipped through pages, their faces darkening with fury. Chidi's confident facade cracked. "This is fabrication. She's desperate, creating forgeries to—" But Mrs. Ifeoma stood, her voice cutting through the noise. "I witnessed Mr. Chidi approve payment to a vendor that doesn't exist. I have the email thread. The vendor address is actually his mistress's apartment in Lagos." Another employee, emboldened, stood as well. "Miss Amara used company funds to pay for her fashion show in Abuja. I processed the invoices myself. She told me to code it as marketing consultation." One by one, the overlooked employees Mr. Obiora had quietly protected stood and testified. The shareholders' anger turned from Adanna to the Nwosu siblings, who sat frozen as their schemes unraveled publicly. Then Adanna delivered her final point. "Mr. Obiora didn't choose me because I'm special. He chose me because I'm honest. He built this company serving good food to everyday people, treating customers and employees with dignity. His children forgot that. They saw the business as their personal bank account. I may not have a business degree, but I know how Mr. Obiora wanted this company run, with integrity, and that's exactly what I'll do. The vote was called. The motion to remove Adanna failed spectacularly. 43 shareholders against, only 7 in favor. Chidi and Amara were officially barred from company premises, facing potential criminal charges. As they stormed out, Amara hissed at Adanna, "You haven't won. You'll never be one of us." Adanna smiled sadly. "You're right. I'll never be like you. Thank God for that." 6 months later, Port Harcourt couldn't stop talking about the transformation of Obiora Enterprises. Adanna had restructured the mid-tier restaurants with affordable pricing, drawing crowds of everyday families who'd never felt welcome before. She promoted from within, elevating hardworking staff regardless of their connections. She started a training program for young people from poor backgrounds, remembering her own struggles. Profits actually increased because customer loyalty skyrocketed. People loved supporting a business with a conscience. Adanna never forgot where she came from. Once a month, she worked a shift at Sunrise Café, serving customers in her old uniform, reminding herself and others that there's no shame in honest work. Her story became legend in Port Harcourt, the waitress who inherited billions and used it to prove that character beats privilege every single time. She transformed Mr. Obiora's empire into something even greater, a business that honored both profit and people, success and soul. In a world racing toward wealth and status, Adanna's tale whispers a powerful truth. The small kindnesses we offer when nobody's watching plant seeds we may never see bloom, but they grow nonetheless. Character cannot be bought, inherited, or faked. It's built in quiet moments of choosing compassion over convenience, dignity over disregard. You don't need billions to be rich. You need the courage to see people as people, to serve without expectation, to stand firm when your values are tested. Adanna didn't become successful because she inherited money. She inherited money because she was already successful at being human. And that's a wealth available to every single one of us, right now, today. So go forth and be kind. You never know what doors your simple humanity might open, what lives you might change, including your own. If this story touched your heart, hit that like button right now. Subscribe to this channel so you never miss stories that remind us what truly matters. And please, comment below. What did Adanna's journey teach you? What kindness have you shown that seems small, but might have meant everything to someone? Share this video with someone who needs to remember that their character is their greatest asset. Your story matters too.